and some things perhaps not so well, so I will say a few words about that. The second question is, why are there different paces of recovery? Why do different countries respond to those crises differently? And the third thing is that, the third question that comes to my mind is that is the global tourism community any more resilient now than it was before COVID struck? Now, in terms of the first question, Greece, first of all, did a multifaceted approach on dealing with the COVID crisis. First of all, we stopped thinking and dealing with the immediate problems of how do we bring tourists back. We focus on our clients, on our people, on the people that choose Greece to come and come again. So all our campaigns during COVID were not about Greece, were not about how lovely Greece is and would like you to come. They were about our friends abroad. So we said them initially, we told them, please stay home, be safe. There will be time for traveling again, but this is not the time. This is the time for safety, this is the time for prudence, this is the time to keep yourself safe, and then we'll have times later on to come again and enjoy life. But now we have to preserve life. And in the second wave of communication with our clients, we really try to give them a taste of Greece from abroad, a digital taste of Greece. So we tried to engage our chefs, to show videos of cooking, Greek cooking, or music with famous Greek singers, etc., etc. So basically, we try to keep the connection in order to ensure that they are supported both physically and psychologically from the point of view of Greece. The second goes straight to the heart of this conference. We use the AI and we use the digital tools in a very, very innovative way in order to be able to target our testing and get more people tested that had higher risk as opposed to doing just random testing. This way, we were able to control our borders, we were able to convince our doctors that it was safe to open our borders, we were able to collaborate across the ministries and ensuring that we accepted people with great safety. This was not just planned on paper, but it was proven in practice, because we were able, for example, to find the positivity rates of different countries 2 days before those positivity rates were publicly available with the numbers that the countries were publishing. If you remember that time, everybody was looking at the data of every day the countries and checking how things are. And of course, the third and most important thing, and I know that this is very important in terms of the vision that Ed has, is that we supported the workers of the tourism community. This is the most important thing. When we supported the enterprises in Greece, we stipulated that they were not allowed to lay people off. That as soon as they reopened, they had to rehire the same people that they had during the crisis. Now, this is not a decision that other countries did. They, for example, the UK made a different decision, Holland as well. But when the time came to restart and reopen the airports, our airports were able to engage personnel immediately, whereas Heathrow or Schiphol or other airports had a great difficulty in hiring people again and finding people to restart their airports. As a result, we had far, far fewer problems with suitcases. You remember the time that everybody would lose their suitcase in Heathrow and in Schiphol and in Charles de Gaulle in Paris and whatnot? Well, we did not have the same problems in Greece because we immediately were able to restart with full personnel. So that is, if you like, the lessons that we find from at least the Greek experience. This was all in all positive. engaging with the stakeholders was another important factor, but at the same time, sometimes we were forced to make quick decisions, act quickly, and surprise our partners, the tour operators, the other international corporations, but it was something that was, I think, to a large extent inevitable. Now, not all the countries follow the same path, and that comes down sometimes to different priorities. In Asia, the skies were much more strict and closed for a much longer period of time. And this is an understandable priority. So this is not just about tourism. When you have a global pandemic like COVID, then of course you have different approaches and different policy decisions and different policy ideologies that drive those decisions. And of course, those priorities will be manifested in the kind of recovery. Now, when the countries make those decisions rationally, that's okay. But if they make those decisions haphazardly and by mistake, then of course this is not okay. And I think what's unique and what's important is to ensure that centers like your center, Professor Valles, is there, like UNtourism, are there institutions that can actually assess those policy decisions, assess the good and bad things that Jamaica, that Greece, that other countries have done, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Kenya, Nigeria, South Korea or Indonesia. Those policy decisions have real consequences. And we are uniquely placed, Natalia, to use UNtourism to assess those policy decisions, and through that assessment, ensure that we highlight the best practices. Because in my vision, the UNtourism is a pedestal for the member states. The member states are actually the creators of the value. And UNtourism can be the catalyst, the accelerator of that value, so that we copy those best practices, we conceptualize them, make them into products, and ensure that there are enough consultants and practitioners to copy them, to push them on the ground and on the field in order to make the transformation that we all deem necessary. So, the third question is the most difficult question to answer. Are we wiser than 2019? I think the answer is mixed. Yes and no. I think COVID, for example, accelerated your ideas and the pressure and the need, and gave you arguments to convince everybody that this crisis center is required. And the work that this crisis center in Kenya, for example, what a lovely speech before, and thank you for that. The work that the center does in Africa and how important that is. So we are much better than before. But I'm sure at the same time that we are poised to make similar mistakes should a new crisis arise. And if there's one thing we know for sure, is that new crises will arise more and more often, more and more stronger than before, and with bigger and bigger consequences. As I speak, in my home country in Greece, Santorini is being rattled with earthquakes every day, more than 200 earthquakes. Thank God this is waning now in the past few days, but nobody knows whether this is just a small cycle and it will start again in earnest. I guess this is the price you pay for an island which is a part of a caldera. It's on top of a volcano. And that's part of its beauty and part of the appeal for the tourists, but also is a part of the problems that we face. In Spain, in Valencia, we had this huge devastation with the floods. And of course the Caribbean is an area where people are used to building the same thing again and again after hurricanes and stations and problems arise. And I think it's time that we found out what works and what doesn't work. And UNtourism as well as the Resilience Center, are huge tools to that end. And finally, we need to not just showcase the pilot projects and give awards and switch off the lights and then go about to our business, but it's time that we take those best practices and we push them out to the world. But in order to do that, thank you, yes. Yes, I think this is not what I'm saying. This is an applause for the work that the Center and UNtourism can and should do. This is what we should be doing. And in order to do that, we need to find adequate funding. So I think UNtourism has to work with the multilateral institutions and establish a tourism resilience fund. A fund that will actually allow all the countries to collaborate together and to help each other, because we cannot think about growth without thinking about unity. We cannot think about the positive future without safeguarding ourselves and the countries next to us in the extent that the calamity might come. So, this is a job which is difficult to do. It requires a lot of collaboration. And of course, I have submitted myself as a candidate for Greece in order to ensure that UNtourism will rise up to this task and ensure that we work in the next few years to bring real and meaningful change and meaningful value to its member states, 160 countries around the world that are thirsty for solutions, are thirsty for support. So I humbly tell you that I'm here to work with you, Minister Bartlett, and to work with all the ministers across the member states to ensure that this happens. Thank you very much.